Akarja, you're very welcome back to the Ogham Academy. Or if it's your first time here, Fáilte, come in, welcome. I am Lora O'Brien, and today I have a bit of a rant for you, but it's a loving, educational, grounded in source material rant. Because listen, most of what you've heard, read, or seen online from neopagan sources, unfortunately, is bullshit. This is particularly about Ogham, but actually it could cover many different topics, I think. But we're talking about Ogham today specifically, and the Ogham information that's being practiced and taught even in neo-pagan circles is absolutely shocking. It's shocking. Now, I don't say that lightly, right? And I don't say it just to stir the pot, but it does need to be said because the whole point of what we're doing here at the Ogham Academy is reconnecting with the real thing, the actual historical, indigenous Irish context of the Ogham. That's what I have studied. It was part of my master's topic when I did a master's in Irish history. And it's really been like my life's work. But to do that, we need to strip away the layers of absolute nonsense that have built up. And again, especially in neo-pagan and new age circles, druids, I'm looking at you, druid groups, over the last 100 years or so. So let's talk about where it all came from and why it's such a problem today. Now, if you've been around the pagan scene for any length of time, chances are you've come across Ogham as a tree alphabet, right? Yeah. Maybe even as a magical system with sticks to throw and divination spreads. I think there was an English author who jumped on the Celtic cash cow many, many years ago, her and her husband, who had a book and stick set published, which was like Celtic wisdom sticks, which was very loosely based on the Ogham, but was mostly based on what we're going to talk about, which is Robert Graves, right? So if you've seen any of those kind of spreads or very elaborate like seasonal calendars based on which tree is in bloom, it sounds really mystical, right? It's great. We can lump it in with Celtic astrology and call it good, right? We've got our mysticism and our magic sorted. Unfortunately not. But that whole system really comes straight from one bloke, Robert Graves, and his now completely discredited book, The White Goddess. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on this fella. He was a poet. He was quite an interesting poet, I suppose, for his day. He was very much a romantic as well. He was not a scholar. He certainly was not any kind of academic. He didn't have any kind of academic interest in the Ogham. He was a lot of what he wrote was fantasy and fictional, and he gave it a kind of a scholarly view or a scholarly flavor to make it sell, I suppose. But he was not a scholar. He was not working from solid source material. What Graves did, and I'm really not exaggerating here, is he took some fairly shaky theories from an earlier scholar who was an academic, but himself made a lot of kind of far reaching stretches with regard to the Ogham. He was involved in very early Ogham studies, in fairness. And he was also kind of working outside the culture, was part of the ascendancy academics here in Ireland. His name was R.A.S. McAllister. And while he went on to develop some of his theories and certainly did a lot of research and made a very valuable contribution to the early study of Ogham, what Graves did was just take his, as I said, some of his shakiest theories and just really went wild with them, became inspired by them. And this was not inspiration of the Imbas Farasnai type. This was pure fantasy inspiration, unfortunately. So we're talking like full on fan fiction levels of elaboration here, guys. Graves imagined this whole ancient pan European moon goddess religion, supposedly originating in the Aegean, brought by the people of the sea, in scare quotes, who traveled around influencing Hebrews, Greeks, Celts, you name it, right? these people supposedly came from the sea and brought all of this moon goddess cult with them. And somehow he reckoned these teachings all got encoded into the Ogham script. I kid you not. This was like the secret knowledge, the hidden calendars, the trees with magical properties lined up to the seasons of the year. You've probably heard it all before. And you may have believed some of it, but unfortunately, it's all nonsense. And not just according to me, though I'll happily tell you why from a historical perspective. But even McAllister himself, the guy Graves based all of this off, eventually went, yeah, no, that's not it. That's not it. So modern scholars have absolutely binned these ideas because they really just don't hold up. The evidence is not there. It is pure fantasy. But here's the rub. His book, The White Goddess, hit the neopagan world like wildfire, and it's still burning. People picked it up and ran with it without checking if any of it was true, without looking at cultural context, without doing any actual study on Ogham themselves, without looking at the original manuscripts, the language, the Irish language that Ogham was developed to express the actual sounds of, or any of the archaeology from the monumental Ogham tradition. So we have two traditions in Ogham, the monumental, which is the earliest, which is the stones, and then later it moved into the manuscript tradition. So both of those are particularly and specifically Irish, though that has spread to other places in the world. Never in the United States, never on North America, on the continent of North America, despite what many people will also tell you, unfortunately, also fantasy, right? So we ended up with this whole cottage industry, again, this Celtic cash cow, because Ogham sounds amazing, right? When you link it to a moon goddess cult, what doesn't? But we have all these like Ogham oracle decks and divination cloths and just meanings pulled out of thin air because a certain tree felt magical and, you know, they had associations with the month that it was supposed to be aligned with. And none of it's true. So none of it has any basis. Now, don't get me wrong, divination is a valid practice. I'm not here to dismiss anybody's spirituality in that way. I do it. I do divination. I teach it, right? But we've got to be really clear about what's reconstructed, what's personal gnosis, and what's actually historical. Otherwise, we're just making shit up and calling it Irish, you know? So that's not what we want to be doing at all. It is very much in the cultural appropriation territory. It is the dimming of the light here on the island, definitely. Now, there is mention of Ogham in an Irish myth being used in something like divination. So in Chuckmark Evra, Chuckmark Eton, the wooing of Eton, a druid named Dallin takes four yew wands, Yew, the tree, carves Ogham onto them and uses them to find out where a woman's soul has gone, basically. And that's really interesting. It's a genuine mention. There are other mentions of in the Táin Bó Cúailnge of Ogham potentially being used in a magical capacity to stop an army advancing and used as a kind of a boundary or a protection, maybe spell or a warding. That's interesting as well. But that particular story, the wooing of Eton, doesn't actually tell us how it worked. There's no explanation of what order the feather were in, what they meant, how they were interpreted. Unfortunately, we just don't have that information, right? So, yes, it hints at a magical or ritual use of Ogham. And I would say that when you actually gather the mythological and historical texts, especially moving into the manuscript tradition that we do have, the manuscript tradition, even though it was recorded in medieval monasteries by, you know, monks, by Christian monks, they were obviously experimenting with the Ogham as a source of native spirituality. They very much respected it and they were playing around with it at that point, and possibly recording older uses. We'll never know, unfortunately. But there are three associations with it from the medieval manuscripts. So that bit is not completely made up. But there are also other association lists. There is everything from forts, particular forts, to colors, to artistic skills, to look, there's even a pig Ogham, all right? So all of this is accurate to a point, if you like, but this is the kind of thing that we need to be looking at, not Robert Graves, the White Goddess, right? We have these hints and jigsaw pieces of the magical or ritual use of Ogham, but it's a long way from here's your 23 symbols and their zodiac signs and an oracle spread, right? Now, what we do at the Home Academy is very different. We start from the sources, from the language. We look at the Old Irish and even earlier, the Primitive Irish or Primordial Irish, from the inscriptions carved into the stones in the medieval period. I have visited many of the stones on the island. I have certainly done my research and studied the academic interpretations of the writing that's on there. And we can say quite categorically that some of the very earliest inscriptions seem to be capturing a pagan ethos, let's say, right? So I've looked into all of that from the origins of the Ogham and then on into the manuscript tradition in the medieval period when it was being used and kind of played around with in an academic context. Again, the medieval literati were very, very fond of the Ogham. And there is examples of its being used right up until the 17th and 18th century, which I would still say is historical use here in Ireland. We have source materials such as Orakept Nanakis, the scholar's primer. We have in Labar Ogham, the Ogham Tract. We have scholars such as Damien McManus, who is amazing, who has dedicated a good part of his career to producing a definitive guide to Ogham, to looking at the old academic work of the likes of McAllister and Owen MacNeill and others from the early days of Ogham studies, and has taken that and reinterpreted it and tested it in a lot of ways and put together his own guide to Ogham. Then we have people like David Stifter, who often works out of Maynooth. I'm not sure exactly where he's based currently, but he would be a linguistic expert on the Ogham, well, on Irish language, really. And the Ogham is a personal interest of his, it seems, as well as an academic interest. And I don't want to speak for people, obviously, but he would have advised me along with Nora White, who is also at Maynooth, who is the head of the Ogham in 3D project. So she's more the archaeology and he's more the linguistics. And, you know, we have these modern scholars who are wanting further research done. They advised me to look at basically the social history of Ogham and everything from the revolution to like the folklore of it and how it was actually coming into the modern context here. So that's what I did for my thesis project for my master's. And like all of these folks have spent decades, I've spent decades studying, actually studying the source material. And I've spent as well over 30 years in Irish spirituality as a practicing Draoi. And I've looked at everything from the Ogham to Irish identity to, you know, older witchcraft traditions from the history, again into the modern folklore, the cures, the charms, the figures, the Banfassa figures. All of this has been part of my own journey because when I started out, unfortunately, all I had access to was Celtic wisdom sticks and Robert Graves, the White Goddess. There was nothing accurate. So I had to literally go and get a master's so that I could understand it and so that you don't have to, right? So I'm not saying this to brag. I just want to let you know that this is not a hobbyist project for me. This is part of my life's work, literally. It's real and it's deeply connected to my culture, my language, and my spiritual practice as an Irish person. And that is what I want to share with you through the Ogham Academy. So if you're listening to this and going, oh, crap, I've been doing divination based on trees and moon phases and Celtic astrology and whatever. Look, don't panic. I'm not here to throw shade on anybody. You don't know what you don't know. This stuff has been the only information available. If you want to look at from a spiritual perspective, the only thing available has been crap, really. Apart from notable mention to Aaron Rowan Laurie, who wrote, forgetting the name of their book. I'll link it below. I do recommend that. They did a deep dive into this quite a while ago. But unfortunately, that has been the only commercially available spiritual Ogham book that I would in any way stand over or recommend to anybody. So if you've picked up bad information along the way, don't panic, right? Because, I'm here. I got you. I did too. And only because I was here in the culture and had my own interest in education in Irish history, folklore, mythology, all of that before as a self-taught person, that when I came to start studying Ogham, I could see that it was based on this bullshit, right? But if you don't have that context, if you don't have that culture, how could you see? Again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you have an opportunity now to shift, to root your practice in something real, to learn the actual history, the meanings and the uses of Ogham, and to connect with it in a way that really respects its origins, its source, and your own spiritual integrity and ethics. There's a place for creativity. There really is. There's a place for intuition. There are many gaps that we need to fill in with our own personal gnosis as we use these tools, as we take our own journeys, right? But this is for our personal path. Those gaps are going to be filled in by different people in different ways. It's not that we have a complete system that I'm going to be able to teach you, but what I can give you is the indigenous script that we do have, the native source material that we do have here on the island. And you need to know what you're working with. Otherwise, it's not magic, it's make believe. And I don't know about you, but I want more than that. I want truth, I want depth, I want connection, I want respect, I want healthy growth for this spiritual system, for this ancient wisdom and knowledge that is a part of my culture, my heritage, my tradition. And it may be part of yours as well if you have ancestry here in Ireland. You don't have to, though, to study it. But what you do have to do is connect to source. Because if you're learning from some American in Idaho who has never even set foot on the island, who has no cultural context, then I guarantee you the information that they're basing it off is full of crap, honestly. So, shit in, shit out. And that's just where we're at. And that's why I built the Ogham Academy. That's why I started the Irish Pagan School. That's why I started the Mórrígan Academy. These are all native sources of information. And at the Irish Pagan School, at the Ogham Academy, it's just me for now. But at the Irish Pagan School, we have a range of teachers. It's not just me and my partner, John. We have many Irish teachers who are willing to share their own native and Indigenous practices, beliefs, understandings, experiences, and knowledge and wisdom with anybody who wants to learn, right? We offer proper grounded education, not just vibes and aesthetics, because like, what are you at if that's what you're going for? Stay on TikTok. You're not right for us anyway. Okay, honestly, if you're just here for vibes and aesthetics, if you think Ogham is some spooky, mystical, cool thing that you're just going to pick up as something cool to do at a party, then it's not it. It's not it for you. But if you're ready to get serious, and serious doesn't have to be hard, right? Please understand, I make all of this hard academic information, which is very, very difficult. I mean, like I said, I love Damien McManus as a scholar, but feck is he hard to read. Like, he really is. So I have taken and waded through all of that information and put it into very, very manageable blog posts, podcasts, all of that stuff, so that videos here on YouTube, so that you don't have to. You can just jump to the good stuff, right? And there's some free resources that are available to you that I want to highlight. The one that's down below linked is the guide to Ogham. It's a free PDF that you can download, so you can see the Ogham feather or letters, the symbols themselves, and you can start to become familiar with them, what they mean. Great place to start. If you're starting from nothing, if you're starting from scratch, if you've Googled Ogham on the internet and that's the basis of what you've been doing, then definitely get that guide, have it just as a free resource, print it off, refer to it, right? It has some meanings, some pronunciation help, and just none of the fluff. And there is also an Ogham, a 30-day challenge, basically, where you have access to a lesson per day. You can do it all at once. You can run through it, whatever you want, whatever. You can do it over the month, whatever suits you. But it's really simplified but accurate information. So again, you can start building up that familiarity if you want to take things a little step further than just your free guide. Okay. There's lots of blog posts. There's other videos on this channel. On the podcast, you can absolutely work away on those. So thanks for listening to me. If you found this episode helpful, please review it or share it with a friend, maybe somebody that you know has been taken in by the Celtic wisdom sticks, anybody who needs to hear it. And other than that, I will see you in the next video. So slán go fóill.